Well, on the floor of the Senate this morning, Republican leader Mitch McConnell described this as one last spending binge and a repeat of all the congressional practices that voters hate. Listen.
Americans told Democrats last month to stop what they've been doing. Bigger government, 2,000-page bills jammed through on Christmas Eve, wasteful spending. This bill is a monument to all three.
Now, the problem, critics argue, is that trying to push through a 2,000-page bill in 3 days makes it difficult, if not impossible, to look closely at all the spending in there. That's a major objection from one of the longtime warriors of earmarks, Senator John McCain.
We have already identified approximately 6,488 earmarks, totaling nearly $8.3 billion. $277,000 for potato pest management in Wisconsin. You'll notice that there is a location for literally every one of these earmarks. $246,000 for bovine tuberculosis in Michigan and Minnesota. $522,000 for cranberry and blueberry disease and breeding in New Jersey.
And then there was $6 billion for a rural Iowa school named after Senator Tom Harkin, and another $18 million set aside for two nonprofits connected to two Democratic lawmakers who recently died, Senator Ted Kennedy and Representative John Murtha. There are lots of what Republican Senator John Cornyn calls sweetheart deals, and he said the omnibus spending bill might just as well be called an ominous spending bill. Now, an earmark, of course, is currently defined as any congressionally directed spending. Some of that might be justified, but lawmakers say, how can anyone know? How could they make a considered judgment when the bill is dropped on senators just before Christmas with the idea of pushing it through in only 3 days? So many Republicans and some Democrats argue the Senate should do what the House did, pass what is called a continuing resolution that just continues spending at current levels until February, when lawmakers would have the time to examine spending calmly and carefully.
All right, Jim, let me
Megyn?
ask you a question, because it's easy to blame this on the Democrats because they're in control in the Senate. This came out of the Senate Appropriations Committee. But what we're being told is that the Republicans, who are now shocked, so shocked to receive this bill with all its earmarks in it right before the end of the year, have been working behind closed doors for months with the Democrats on this very bill. And some of the Republicans who are most outraged now, including Mitch McConnell and John Cornyn, who you mentioned in your piece, both have earmarks in it. McConnell has got $4 million for marijuana eradication efforts in the Kentucky National Guard, $1 million for construction of a blood center, and $650,000 for advanced genetic technologies. Cornyn has his own earmarks. Now, so lest anybody be confused, both parties appear to blame for this. Am I wrong?
Well, no, you're absolutely right. Now, what the Republicans will say is that we put those earmarks in earlier this year. Since then, especially Senator McConnell, since then, we have voted for a moratorium on all earmarks.
Right, but are they pushing to take them out now? They did. The Republicans voted for a moratorium on earmarks in November, but are they pushing to have their own earmarks taken out of this spending bill?
They're going to vote against this spending bill with those earmarks in it for that very reason. Now, keep in mind, Megyn, this is a fascinating issue, one that's going to be debated in the new Congress, because what does a member of Congress do? They get money for their district, right? For things that are needed in their district. The question, McCain had always defined an earmark as something slipped into a bill in the middle of the night that no one has ever looked at, never went through committee, was never voted on or scrutinized by other members of Congress. That certainly applies to this omnibus spending bill because it didn't go through committees. People just shoved stuff in there. But under other conditions, is it wrong for any member of Congress to say there is a need in my district? That is a different kind of debate and one that's likely to be held in the next Congress.
Yeah, and that's why they're talking about, okay, fine, you want at least we've got names attached to them now. And by the way, in the next 2 hours, we'll be naming them. We'll be telling you who's asking for the pork on both sides of the aisle. They say that now at least we know who it is. But those who want to vote no to this omnibus spending bill, Jim, are now faced with a difficult choice because they may want to say no to the earmarks, but they also want to keep the government funded, which is why now some are proposing this. Correct. Let's just have a continuing resolution, meaning something get us through the next couple months so we can clean up this bill, get this junk out of there, and have a nice clean spending bill with a lower number.
Well, yeah, because the government runs out of money this weekend, so they've got to do something this week, which is why they resent having it dumped on them with 3 or 4 days left to get something done to keep the government open.
Do you watch the show, Jim? Do you know what my mother's cupboard? You know the sign in my mother's cupboard? Did you ever hear me talk about it? It read as follows. Our viewers know this now. Lack of planning on your part does not justify an emergency on my part.
And that is exactly what Republicans are saying to Senator Reid.
All right. Jangle, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, we have reached out to several of these lawmakers who have some pretty pricey earmarks, the following of whom either ignored us altogether or explicitly declined our request to come on camera today and defend their earmarks. If they think they're so great, come on camera, speak to the American people, and you tell them why. Here are some of the examples. Congressman Jay Inslee of Washington, who wants $247,000 for virus-free wine grapes in his state, refused to talk to us. Senator Saxby Chambliss of Georgia wants $413,000 for peanut research in Alabama. Nope, doesn't want to come on. Congresswoman Betty McCollum of Minnesota asking for $246,000 for bovine tuberculosis in Michigan and in Minnesota. Won't come on. Congressman Rush Holt and Frank Pallone of New Jersey. They say they need $522,000 for cranberry and blueberry disease and breeding in their state. And $277,000 for potato pest management in Wisconsin was requested by Congressman David Obey, none of whom could find time to talk to you today. 2 more hours left to go. Give us a call, any of you. We'll put you on. We'll give you a fair and balanced interview. Promise.